Thank you, Lord, for this day, just another day that you've given us. It's just, to be your servants, Lord, and just to spread your love. Because when it comes down to it, that's the only thing that makes it out of here. Lord, bless this class and that it may enrich our souls. And just like that fire in us, Lord, just that we would want to share, what precious things that we been bestowed upon us, Lord. Just the grandness of your love that we want to share that with everyone else. And a special prayer for Pastor Butch, just that everything goes well over there in his surgery. And just we ask all this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Just real quick on that opening before you start, if you haven't already.
Sorry.
You already did start? All right, a reminder. I'll give you guys an update on all that stuff after this, okay? Reminder, if you can. All right? Everything's good. All right? Just say that much right now. All right, guys, tonight we're going to be at 2 Samuel chapter 15. 2 Samuel chapter 15. And Ramon, I do want to tell you, I just really appreciate that there in your prayer because it's one thing that's really been being preached and taught, and I was really, really hoping that we gain more and more of it, and that fire and desire to bring it to them, whoever they may be, anyone who's outside. Yeah, and I appreciated all the comments and everything about the sermon on Sunday, and very, very thankful for the wonderful experience that so many had from it, and I just wanted that part of the sermon also in the class last night, and maybe it did, maybe it just wasn't what was spoken about, but it turned to them out there. Because yes, the death of our sins, but to realize that they're in that same boat. We've been rescued from it. So for us, it's sweet. Yeah? But for them, it won't be, if that's where they stay. We're the ones who have to rescue. Yeah, 2 drowning men in the water. Neither one was going to get saved. We're all just going to die. We're the ones who's already been pulled out. So we're supposed to be rescuing them. Yeah? So anyways, I do appreciate that in the prayer. I wanted that out. I'm sorry. That's me if I have to say something. 2 Samuel chapter 15, guys, we've been walking through all the rules of faith. We got down, we've been walking through David. All right? We just had the big kind of happening that a lot of people know about with David and Bathsheba. And what ended up bringing us Solomon. From there, we had the whole entire situation with Tamar and I said the wrong boy's name. Amnon, and Tamar, in which he takes her, he rapes her, and you see as it's kind of unfolding and everything else. Her whole entire thing was that she just wanted to do it. She wanted to do it before the Lord. It doesn't seem like there's any kind of spike towards him, towards even his desire. Almost as if possibly, she did like him. She just wanted it to be done right. And so she requests for it. And really, everything she brought was the words of God. And that was one thing that was really big to me was that everything she was bringing was just God's words, but he could not hear her. And it repeats that over and over and over again. That he would say it, but she would say this, and you would hear God's words. And then it would say, but he could not hear her. And because of that, then all of a sudden it leads him to these deeds, his hatred, all those kind of things. She runs off. Absalom, which is her actual full brother, takes her in, and Absalom's hatred towards Amnon grows greatly. And 2 years, I think it was, that passed by, and then Absalom invites other brothers out for a grand feast because of the shearing of the sheep. Which would have been customary in the sense of the rejoicement over having the yield. So that part was not all too strange. However, he kept on asking about Amnon going, in which David kind of thought was peculiar, but he at the same time went ahead and allowed it. All the boys go out there. There's this great feast. And then next thing we know is that Absalom kills Amnon. All right? There was a lot of little tidbits all throughout all that, guys. That was very, very big and spiritual. Moving on from that, Absalom had probably a lot of it was fear from David, and again, even by the Levitical law, what would be demanded was an eye for an eye. And so, by him taking Amnon's life, then that would mean that it would be his head. So he runs to his grandfather's, and stays there for a period of time. Now, David never sought to actually kill him, and actually his heart groaned for him. He wanted him delivered. And but at the same time, for whatever reasons, never took any action. So then we had Joab, who goes to work. And so he brought in a wise woman, if you remember, she's a pretty smart speaker, brings her in, gives her kind of the layout of what to go over and to say, which brings David around to realizing that, you know what, no, he is king and that he can't forgive his son, and that's what needs to take place, and basically that's what happens. Okay, long story short. So David forgiving him brings him back home. All right, and again, there was a lot of little sweet things throughout all that. That brought us to chapter 15, which is where we're at right now. All right, so David, Absalom has been brought back to the city of David. Ready? Here we go. After this had happened, that Absalom provided himself with chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. Pause real quick. Chariots were a sign of complete military power. They were the most powerful tool in war. Okay? And so, if you notice, David did not supply him with, but he supplied himself with. Now, him being the King David's son and being restored to that forgiveness has the ability to go and do this, right? Without question. However, it is he himself who goes out and provides for himself these chariots and horse, and then 50 men to run before him. So what's interesting to me was that part right there, the 50 men to run before him. Do you know what those guys did? They were runners. And what the runners did was the runners always stayed out in front of Absalom. So anywhere Absalom went, those 50 men were always out in front. And so if they were coming into a city, those 50 men would enter the city well before Absalom and his chariots and his horsemen would all get there looking all beautiful and powerful and strong. And those 50 men would all get there and they would start announcing, hey, guess who's coming? The son of David, Absalom. He's coming, he's coming, he's coming. Man, look how strong he is. Look how big he is. Look at it. And here he is, here he is, here he is. And so it was constantly drawing attention to Absalom. Yeah? Well, you know, one of the keys, I hit this over and over and over again. Why was David really a man after God's own heart? Okay, so you said that the word humility, and he was always seeking for God to be elevated in the sight of the people. He never cared for his own praise. Okay? But everything that you ever hear from David, except for that period of time right there with Bathsheba, is that it's always to God be the glory. God gave the victory. God did. God did. God did. God's our strength. God's our power. God's our leader. God, God, God. And now here you have Absalom coming in, and then also we have these 50 that he is brought on for this one purpose, to go in and promote Absalom first before Absalom ever shows up. And then when they would see him, I mean, if you could imagine, you know, I don't know how many chariots, and there's the sound that would be coming in, their blades, their bows, everything else, and, you know, all the horses, everything else. And then here comes Absalom, I'm sure dressed in very, very fine apparel, and just the attention all for himself. Now, this is all in Absalom's plan. It says, now Absalom would rise early and stand beside the way of the gate. So literally the entrance into the city of David. He would stand by the gate. And so it was whenever anyone who had a lawsuit came to the king for a decision. Now that word lawsuit here is a little bit of a, I feel, poor translation, because it just really meant that any deep problem or issue that they had.
Yeah, mine says controversy.
Controversy, yes. And so that lawsuit one, like, that's a poor translation in mine, I feel like. But yeah, it's like more of the controversy than the problem issues that they had. And if guys, by the way, think about it. I mean, David is the king, right? And so how big would your issue be if you're going to travel from wherever you're at and possibly spend days on the road to go and ask David for his wisdom and for him to help you find the answer and to supply that answer? How important would it be? Thank you. Monique's whispering way back there in the back. I don't know why the rest of you don't want to talk to me at all, so fine. No, I mean, like, it would have to be very, very important if you're going to go bother the king with it. Now, Absalom would sit out there and he would call to them and they would say, hey, what city are you from? And they would answer, well, your son is from such and such a tribe of Israel. Then Absalom would say to him, look, your case is good and is of the king to hear you. Moreover, Absalom would say, oh, if I were the judge of the land, and everyone who has any suit or any trouble or cause could come to me, then I would give him justice. Man, working to undermine, to deceive, to cause disunity, slander, and doing it in such a way, right? Everywhere, any of those cities, as Absalom rode through them, you would know who Absalom was because of his runners, right? Then he goes and he sits out in front of the, kissing the baby, shaking everybody's hands. I'm on camera, I better stop. Okay. Not together. No, it's okay. No, it's me. It's not you. He would stand out there, and anybody that came through, king is too busy to hear your issues, to your problems. But if I was the judge, then I would take care of you. But I'm not. Sorry, you're out of luck. He's too busy for you. And then using the word that he didn't even put a deputy to hear you. As if David thought so less of them or whatever else that he wouldn't even give them somebody that would hear you. Yeah? And so it was whenever anyone came near to bow down to him, that he would put out his hand, and he would take him, and he would kiss him. And in this manner, Absalom acted towards all of Israel who came to the king for judgment. And this is how Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. So it came to pass that after 40 years, that Absalom said to the king, please let me go to Hebron and pay the vow which I made to the Lord. For your servant took the vow while I dwelt in Geshur in Syria, saying, when the Lord of Hebrews back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord. Now, this culturally is a big, big deal. If you make a vow, you keep your vow. Let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes. Yeah? Still really should be something that we take serious. So him bringing this to David in this manner is something that for David, how would David forbid him from keeping his vows? Do you understand that? So the way that he's presented this to David is in a way in which there was no way for David to be able to do anything about it, because then it'd be as if David was going against God. Yeah? Now, why is Absalom going through this? Should probably say right before I read that part. But why is Absalom doing this?
Take the throne.
Okay, taking control, secure position for himself. Anybody? Anybody else? Absalom, guys, things didn't go Absalom's way, right? He's a son of David, who was the firstborn. Yes? So what's funny is that him being the firstborn, guess who is the rightful heir to the throne? Absalom. So in the time in which God had David to be there when David would pass away, if Absalom would have just been a wonderful son and just loved his father and loved the Lord, guess what Absalom would have? The kingdom. And all the hearts of all the people. Yeah? And by the way, the heart of God too. Why doesn't Absalom care about any of this? Do you think Absalom has ever been told about the Lord, about his ways, and all those kind of things? If David made sure that every man, woman, and child in all of Israel, I'm pretty sure he made sure his own son. Yeah? So why? Where's Absalom? Okay, just getting down to the nuts and bolts of it, he's lost. Guys, the reality of it is things in his life is not going the way that he wanted it to go. As soon as, there may have been other little things, whatever else within his mind, but where we first see it really pick up is that issue there with tomorrow, when that takes place there. And Absalom, even though it says that David hated what took place. Yes? But David did not go and kill Amnon. And you know what Absalom probably felt like should have been? But he didn't. He probably felt like, God should not have allowed this to take place. Yeah? That God should have kept Amnon from doing it, or at least allowed for the vengeance to take place immediately for Amnon doing what he done. Yes? So since God's not going to do it, guess what? I'm going to. Because I'm going to be God, and I've judged the situation, and I've looked at it, and I've decided that it didn't go my way, and I'm God over this situation, so I'm going to make something happen in this situation. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get Amnon, and I'm going to take him off away from David, where there is no protection for him. And then I'm going to take my vengeance. I'll pour out my wrath. And did he do so? You know what's crazy is God allowed him to. Yeah? You know what's funny is? I wonder if he thought, man, if I kill him, that'll give me peace. Have you ever thought that about something? Well, if I just get this or get somebody for this, then, once I have my vengeance, then I'll be okay. Right? And you know what's always happened? You're still not. You know why? Well, because really they weren't the issue. And whatever it was that those things were never the issue. You know what the issue always was? Where you're going to live, where your heart is, where your love is, where your value is towards the Lord. All the things of Absalom was all of the things that he was going against the Lord. And his dad is nothing more than just a place for him to try to take his next strike at. See, killing his brother didn't do it good enough. That didn't satisfy him. So then now, killing dad, maybe that'll, yeah? Overthrowing all the people, the more power I get, maybe something will satisfy this within me. This emptiness, this sadness, this despair that's within me. Yeah. Now I've got to feel it somehow, and then maybe if I do this, it'll do. Now you look at the plans, the work that so far has been put forth, and we haven't even got anywhere yet. But all the work that he's put in so far, the planning that he's put forth so far, and you go back to him killing his brother, how that was planned out. Absalom is no fool when it comes to earthly wisdom. He looks at how to say things to manipulate the situation from that bit with his brother and his father, to get his brother pulled off the way. He once again here, he's working his wording and everything else, with everything from the runners that he sends out before him, leading up to the point that now he's going to stand in front and undermine any person that tries to come to David. And by the way, every single one of those people that would have come to David, what do you think they'd return home saying? Whatever town they were from, whatever place in Israel they were from, what would they come back and say? Oh, you know what, man? David, he was just too busy for me. He didn't do anything for me, But Absalom, he was there. He was there for me. He even kissed my hand and blessed me before I left. And you know what? If he was king and if he was judge, then everything would be better. Oh my gosh, the twisted ways. And you have to remember, though, too, that even those, because some of those, I believe very, very greatly, when they loved David. But the constant hearing something else. Solomon says in Proverbs, my son, hear my wisdom. If you cease hearing my words, you will flee from my ways. You'll fall away from it. You'll go away from it. That's what will happen if you stop hearing the word. You say, oh, it ain't that way. Really? I think God's a little bit smarter. Or, this is the one that I'm welcome to use in one of these sermons right here. Maybe you're smarter than God. Right? Because you add to his counsel, right? You tell him how to do this, right? Well, but a lot of times we think we are smarter than God. Yeah? We think it doesn't really quite have to be God's way. It can be my way. Absalom wanted it to be his way. Now, you look at David and what David lived out. His son rapes his daughter. You look at all the different things, from his heart being far from God, desiring her more than he loved God. Kind of adultery, right, towards God. Right? But I'm sure Absalom never loved anything more than he loved God. So he was just in judgment, right? Because he was perfect in that. Just like you, right? I'm sure you've never loved anything more than you love God, put anything else first before God. Right? But look how he plays, and Satan plays the game. What happened? The underlying constantly, the working of Satan, twisting every single thing in Absalom's own heart and in the heart of the people. And then constantly hearing another way, another thing, someone else. And so all of a sudden it comes down and it says, now the king, so the king says to him, because he asked this about going to Geshur on this point of this vow. And so David says to him, then you go and you go in peace. And again, David's just for him. Yeah? Another thing, kind of like the king before David, I don't think Absalom ever really believed that God was for him and that his father was for him. Just like Saul. It says, then Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom reigns in Hebron. Some key things here. The reason why, first of all, these spies are sent in. We normally think of spies as somebody who's incognito, right? Right? You don't know who they are. They act like they're completely somebody else, whatever else. These spies were not in the same way that we would normally think of, like spying out, trying to find out what the other people are doing and everything else. This was more about propaganda. This is more of those, they go in, and then they're like, oh yeah, you're going through this and that, oh man, Absalom one day he'll be king. And when he's king, he won't have those issues no more. When he comes, you'll follow him, right? When he becomes king, you'll follow him. Yeah, okay, all right. Well, you're on our side then. You know what? You're going through these troubles. Oh, you know what? Oh, you're hungry, man. You know what? Oh, if Absalom was king, he would take care of that, And, when he's king, wouldn't you follow him when he was king? Oh, you would? Okay, good. It's a good thing to know that, you're going to be with him when it comes that time. Weaseling, sliding, yeah? Deceiving, yes? Setting it all up. And then he says, for when you hear the sound of the trumpet, you shall say, Absalom reigns in Hebron. The reason why that is key is because guess where David was ordained to be king? In Hebron. By God. In Hebron. So even those that might think, man, God, right? God chose David. As long as God had chosen Saul, who did they follow? Saul. And then when David is given the kingship, then God had chosen him, even though actually the choosing in Hebron had happened many, many years before he actually takes the crown. Yes? But everybody knew of that story by the time David takes it. Okay? And so to understand that, it's almost putting on that extra little oomph of support that it would even be the same place that God had ordained. Making it more legitimate. Yeah? And with Absalom went 200 men, invited from Jerusalem, and they went along innocently and did not know anything. So the 200 men were with him, and it says invited. It was probably more like David sent, if you don't know the truth, but whether it was, whether it wasn't, it says here invited, allowed to come along. But they did not have any idea about the working that Absalom was working. Okay? There's no doubt that Absalom would hope that these 200 would follow him. It says, then Absalom sent for That guy. Ahithophel, the Gilonite, who was David's counselor from his city. From Gilah, wow, he offered sacrifices. So this counselor had went off in the city to go offer sacrifices, and Absalom sends for him. Yes? And the conspiracy grew stronger. So guess who was already a part of Absalom's? Yep. Absalom's treason. He grew stronger, for the people with Absalom continually increased in number. Now, after some time, a messenger came to David saying, "The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom." So David immediately said to all of his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, "Arise and let us flee, or we should not escape Absalom. Make haste to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly and bring disaster upon us and strike the city with the edge of the sword." Realities. Satan constantly working with Absalom, through Absalom. So if you can look at the physical story, look at the spiritual reality, guys, with everybody that's out in this world. Satan's constantly sitting there and undermining. Oh, look, see, if God loved you, look, this wouldn't happen. Look, if God loved you, then he would just drop $1 million out of the sky. And look at this and look at that. And it's constantly trying to undermine. Right? Creating a thought towards God that's not really real. Because if you really know God and you really know, understand the theology of it all, the things that are so horrible that we experience in this life has nothing to do with God being against us. It all has to do with the curse. Sin. And it's God who's always trying to deliver us out of that sin. Yes? Just like David here, being representation of Christ, is always busy about redeeming, saving some from the destruction. So when he hears that destruction is coming, even by the hand of his own beloved son, his own love, as soon as he heard that the destruction is coming, what does he do? He says, "Man, let's get out of here." Guys, as spiritually as we're walking through this life, and we get to hear it Sundays, we get to hear it Mondays, we get to hear it Tuesdays, that, there's going to come a point in time where this thing's going to end. And then, you know what? Everything that Satan was feeding, so many people that ate it are going to eat it. Literally. They're going to see the side of God that they always thought that they were seeing through these things that did not have anything to do with that side of God, but the side of wrath. Because God was always busy about saving. We should be like that David saying, "Hey, listen, man, let's get out of here while there's time." Because if we don't get out now, it's going to kill us. Guys, if souls don't get out of that bondage of sin, Satan is going to kill them. And he'll rip away until finally they have no hope. They have no ears to hear, eyes to see. They have no hope. He says, "For let us flee before he overtakes us suddenly and bring disaster upon us and strike the city with the edge of the sword." So the king said to his servants, and the king's servants said to the king, "We are your servants, ready to do whatever my lord the king commands." I think that's a beautiful way for us to respond to our Lord. "Lord, we're your servants. We're ready to do whatever you command." Then the king went out with all his household after him, but the king left 10 women, all concubines, to keep the house. Sorry for keeping Now everybody left. What he left was the concubines. And the king went out with all people after him. Honestly, if you really want to know the truth as far as I've been there with the concubines, usually they would have been saved. The men would have been killed. The children would have been killed. Any of the servants would have been killed. But a lot of times the women wouldn't have been. Okay? And the king went out with all people after him, and he stopped at the outskirts. Then all his servants passed before him. Think about how beautiful that is. So he's leaving to get him out of destruction, right? And he himself could have got out right there, but instead he stops and waits to make sure that he gets every single one of them out first. Again, big representation of the Lord for us. Yeah? Because even though he did go away, honestly, he is the door. He's still standing right there. He's trying to make sure every single one of us gets in before he closes. It says all the Cherethites, all the Pelethites, all the Gittites, 600 men who had followed him from Gath passed before the king. Then the king said to Ittai, we'll go with that. Ittai the Gittite, why are you also going with us? Return and remain with the king. For you are a foreigner and also an exile from your own place. In other words, you don't have to go along with me. Like, everybody knows that you're an exile. You just ran from your own country. They're not going to look at you as though you're one of me. You're with me. He says, in fact, you just only came yesterday. Should I make you wander up and down with us today, since I go and I even do not know where? Return and take your brethren back. Mercy and truth be with you. May you never get what you deserve, and may the reality of Christ always be with you. But Ittai answered and the king said, to the king and said, as the Lord lives, and as my Lord the king lives, surely in whatever place my Lord the king shall be, whether in death or in life, even there your servant will be also. Guys, whatever he heard from David, he's staying with that. And he's also going to make sure that all of his people that came with him are going to be there. So David said to him, go ahead and cross over then. So Ittai the Gittite and all of his men and all of their little ones who were with them crossed over. And all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over. The king himself also crossed over the brook Kidron, and all the people crossed over towards the way of the wilderness. Then there was Zadok, and all of the Levites with him. You guys understand the Levites, right? They are the priesthood. They are the priests. And they were bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of the covenant of God, and Abiathar went up until all the people had finished crossing over from the city. Now he was one of the priests. Then the king said to Zadok, carry the ark of the covenant back into the city. For if I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back, and he will show me both the ark of the covenant and his dwelling place. If I have any faith, if God still loves me at all, I'm not only going to get to see the Ark of the Covenant, which is representation of God here with us, but I'm going to get to go see God where He's at. But if He says thus, that He has no delight, I have no delight in you, then here I am, and let Him do to me as seems good unto Him. The submissiveness of David is, to me, just remarkable. I wish I could live every situation when going through troubles like David. He doesn't get overly up. He doesn't get overly, when you talk about meekness in the truest sense of the definition of the word meekness. He is neither cast down nor overly elated about any one thing. Because he sees that he himself has no power, but all the power rests in God. And that was David's strength. So the king says to Zadok the priest also, are you not a seer? Return to the city of peace, and your 2 sons with you, Ahimaaz, your son, and Jonathan, the son of Abiathar. See, I will wait in the plains of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me. So therefore Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they remained there, along with their 2 sons. So David went up by the ascent of the Mount of Olives. And as he went up there, his head was covered, and he cried and was barefoot. You guys remember the Mount of Olives? Historical points about the Mount of Olives. Anybody?
That's where Christ prayed before he went to the cross.
It's where Christ prayed before he went to the cross. It's where what was it? Is it Timothy? Gets his robe ripped off of him? No, Mark. Gets his robe ripped off of him. They're trying to find out who spied on him. The little boy from the bushes kept on following Jesus around everywhere. Ends up becoming a great man of faith and a worker with Paul and those to bring the gospel. Gets his robe ripped off him, so little neck boy running through Jerusalem and get back home. Yeah, there's many different, if you go back and you guys look, there's actually many different little experiences here with Mount Olives. And I just thought it was really, really neat that here are some thousands of years. And so to realize how that mount must have been and the beauty and the established trees and things like that, and the olive trees that were there. I mean, my brain, I start wondering. Envisioning. It says, all people who were there with him covered their heads, and they also went up weeping as they went. Then someone told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. Now, he was the advisor unto David, who had said that he was going to go make sacrifices, and so he was going to go back to his hometown and make sacrifices. In reality, that's when Absalom sends word to come join up with him so that they would continue on with his treachery. Yeah? So David said, O Lord, I pray, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. Now, I believe it's actually going to say this at some point in the future. But the counsel of Ahithophel was as if he was talking directly from God. Good, bad, or ugly, anything that he said was exactly the way it happened. So he talked about like a royal council, like this guy. So David, once he hears this, his prayer is that all of his counsel be turned from what was the wisdom of God to complete foolishness.
So we can't use it on David.
Yeah, so he can't use it on David. Now it happened when David had come to the top of the mountain where he worshipped God. There was Hushai, the Archite, coming to meet him with his robe torn and dust on his head. And David said to him, if you go with me, then you will become a burden to me. How would you like that to be how the king mentioned it? Dude, what are you doing here? If you come with me, you're just going to be burdened. You're messing up my day.
Slowing the roll.
You're slowing my roll, man. You're going to get like, I think it's funny. He says, but if you return to the city, and you say to Absalom, I'll be your servant, O king, and as I was your father's servant previously, I will also now be your servant. Then maybe you might defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. And do you not have Zadok and Abiathar the priests with you there? Therefore, it will be that whatever you hear from the king's house, you shall tell Zadok and Abiathar the priests. And indeed, they have there with them their two sons, Ahimaaz and Zadok, and Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son. And by them you shall send me everything you hear. And the wisdom, there were David. All right. Priests, get back in there and keep on doing the priest, being the priest. No matter what else goes down, one thing David wanted to ensure was that the priests were going to still be the priests and going to still be proclaimed in the city of David. Okay? Furthermore, one of his other counsel, one of his lead counselmen, here has shown up. And he says, listen, man, what are you doing here? For truthfully, if you're with me, you're going to be a burden to me. All you'll do is give me a bunch of information, and it's all going to be bad news. No? Okay. It said, go back and be right there by my son's side. And whatever the one counselor says, maybe you can undermine whatever he says. David had just prayed to God to make the one counselor's counsel foolishness. And no more than just a few steps into this, all of a sudden here shows up this other counselor. And God gives him the wisdom to send him back. So guess what God just did? In a quick, fast hurry. He just answered David's prayers. And in a way that probably we normally wouldn't think that our prayers would be being answered. But God was busy answering the prayers already. Plus, the priests that are back there doing their priest things, they're going to be there for you. So you're not alone. Oh man, well, I'm going to have to go back into this world of all the death and everything like that. No, man, no, the word's with you. You're not alone. The priests are there for you. You're not alone. Jesus says, man, I'm going on the way, but you're not alone. You still have the word being preached to you. You still have the body. You still have the spirit. You still have all of it. And by the way, the spirit, the spirit and the word are one. Man, you still have it. You're not alone. Yeah? And instead, you might be used for a great purpose. So, Hushai, and I love how it says, who was David's friend. He was for David. You know what the definition of a friend is? The other guy is called a very, very wise counselor, a very good counselor. This man is called a friend. He's a counselor, very, very good. He's a friend. Definition of a friend. One that's going to do everything that it takes, everything they can to get you to heaven. That's a true friend. Yeah? They're not always the best people. They don't always look the best. They don't all have the prettiest faces or whatever it is that we might, I don't know, try to base friendships off. They may not give us everything that we want. We may feel like they're not even there for us all the time. And you know what God uses them for? Constantly. It's everything that's necessary to get us to heaven. Yeah? True friend. So he went back into the city, and Absalom came unto him. Absalom came into Jerusalem. I do believe that Absalom, when he entered Jerusalem, he was expecting some sort of big, gigantic fight. I believe that he thought that David would try to keep the city. It was a stronghold. It would be very, very difficult to overtake militarily. David still had all of his men, all of those of the city of David there to fight. Right? And instead, he walks right in. And David, all of David's men, all those who loved him, everybody, houses empty, crickets in the street. Can you get the point? Probably was kind of a strange entry for someone looking for such a big fight. Walked in to have a fight, found none. It's a lot like Satan tries to do a lot of times, guys. And if we're just walking with Jesus, he tries to come into our house, he tries to cause a big gigantic uproar, and we're already out with Jesus. Yeah. He gets there, he's like, what? I wanted to cause all kinds of pain and destruction and everything. No, they've already been rescued. They've already been freed. Can't get them. Now when David, as we jump into verse chapter 16, now when David was a little past the top of the mountain, there was Ziba. I don't know if you remember Ziba, but he is the servant. It says here the servant of Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was the son of Jonathan. Ziba was the original servant of Jonathan. Okay? Who had raised Mephibosheth. He's the one who carried Mephibosheth, or tried to get Mephibosheth out during the Great War. When Mephibosheth tripped over the rock, whatever happened, made him lame where he couldn't walk. Yeah? So here comes Ziba, and he meets him with a couple of saddle donkeys, and on them 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a skin of wine. With all the other things, I wondered how big was that skin of wine? They had a lot of other good food there. How big was that skin? Sorry. And the king says to Ziba, well, what do you mean to do these things? And Ziba said, well, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride on. And the bread and the summer fruit are for the young men to be able to eat. And the wine are for those who are faint in the wilderness to drink. And so then the king said to him, and where is your master's son? Ziba says, indeed, he's staying in Jerusalem, for he said, today the house of Israel will restore the kingdom to my father, to me. So the king says to Ziba, here are all the belongings. Here, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is now yours. And Ziba said, I humbly bow before you, that I may find favor in your sight, my Lord, O king. Pause real quick. Some different little historical insights there. So again, Ziba is the servant of Jonathan. All that was Jonathan's, Ziba had to, by law, take care of, right? So the land, everything else worked the land, he and his sons. He had many, many sons, if you remember, because when David finally takes over the kingship and then asks about finding if there's any heir of Jonathan that he might complete his oath to Jonathan, which was to take care of Jonathan's sons or daughters, and there was only one that survived. That was Mephibosheth. So he goes and gets Mephibosheth, and he brings Mephibosheth back, remember, to the king's house. Then he turns to Ziba and he says, listen, because all these years you took care of him and treated him with this kindness, now all that used to be Saul's land. So not just Jonathan's, but if you remember, there was 3 sons plus Saul. Saul would have kept a portion, plus the other 3 sons would have had each a divided piece of land, was all given to Mephibosheth, which in turn was really Ziba's to work and to live off of and to grow and prosper. Yes? So Ziba hears and sees that all this is happening with all the people. And so what he does is he goes and gets 2 of Mephibosheth's donkeys and loads them down with all these goods that Ziba's been out there making and building and growing and everything else, all that would all benefit and profit in the end Mephibosheth and his riches and his greatness. Yes? And so in seeing David, he gets all of this to come and take care of David and the people of God. Now, what that could mean for him if he was caught in all this? Death, his head. Okay? Furthermore, he says, man, well, where is Mephibosheth? He said, well, he stayed behind, hoping that what he'll get is the kingdom handed back to him. As if Absalom's point was to give that something to him. But the greed drove him to stay behind. David's returning a reward to Ziba is well, everything that was Mephibosheth's, which was everything that was Saul's, is now yours and your family's. I told you guys way back when, that even though it maybe doesn't look like Ziba got a good deal there, because he had to take care of Mephibosheth, since Mephibosheth was a young little tiny boy, kept him all those years in his own house, fed him off his own table and everything else, and then when he got turned to him was a bunch more land to work and to have to break his back over. And it may not sound like it's all that good, because all those profits are really going to Mephibosheth. How God was working and building so it could be Ziba. Because Ziba just loved God. And you know, Ziba never complained about it, and yet his rewards, even in this lifetime, were so much more than what he would have ever been able to dream as a slave. Because that's what he was to Jonathan. He was a slave. And so now he just went from being a slave having as much land as the king. From a slave to a king.
All that apart.
Yes, sir. The best I ever had. And then there's the one song that says, have you ever dreamt of becoming a king and then became one? When you talk about me and the story is the same one. You guys know every single one of us was born into this world, just servants and slaves and everything else to open up the windows and have them pour out so many blessings, we don't even have room to receive them. Yeah? And there's old Ziva. He just inherited all of us. And he inherited it all by a promise. By a promise that goes all the way back to David and Jonathan. That even on this day right here, it's a promise. I think that's important to understand. He says it's all yours. But guess whose it all was, right when David saying that? Absalom. Because Absalom just overthrew the king. So Ziva's going to have to live by faith, not what he sees. Based on a promise that it's all his. Yeah? Guys, there's tons of different scriptures I won't go into about that. The Lord says that, man, that this earth is ours. The children of God, it's all for us, and it's ours. There's like so many different things, but we don't have to follow it. So, the next part. Should have enough time to get this. I'm glad. Now, when King David came to Bahurim, there was a man from the family of the house of Saul whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. Coming from there, he came out cursing continuously as he came. Sure you never met one of those people. And he picked up stones and he threw them at David and at all the servants of King David. And all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left hand. And also Shemaiah said thus when he cursed, come out, you bloodthirsty man, you rogue. Literally, rogue. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it probably correctly. Belial is the word. What it means, it is a curse word in the Hebrew language, meaning a worthless and useless person. We translated the word into rogue. Okay? You can probably think of the first few curse words that could be used in that definition. I'm on camera, so I can't say all the different ones that would work for that. All right? So we'll just stick to rogue. All right? Bloodthirsty, meaning a man with much blood on his hands. The Lord has brought upon you all of the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom, your own son. So now you are caught in your own evil because you are a bloodthirsty man. Now, guys, perspective is everything for an individual. Okay? We know that David did not kill Saul, nor any of Saul's sons. We know that. He may not. No telling what Absalom was out saying too. But he may not. From his perspective, Saul, and he was a Benjamite, and of the house of Saul. So of the family, same family lineage. Yes? So it's like a cousin. Actually, I think he might have been a cousin, or a nephew, or something like that too. And your cousin was king. His sons, by the law, according to the kings, his sons would be the next heirs to the throne. And during that time, his hatred, his own nastiness, his own unbelief, everything else leads to the point where finally God, because he would not believe God, he continued to reject God. God ends up rejecting Saul and ends up blessing David to be the next king. As the story plays out over all the years, Saul continues to try to destroy and kill David and all those different things. Meanwhile, David did nothing but just bless him and take care of the people of Israel, even attack the surrounding areas that were trying to be harmful to Israel. While Saul was so busy trying to kill David, David was busy trying to protect Israel. But again, those things that David did like that, he did in secret. If you remember, he wasn't out there trying to promote himself. And in fact, any time that it was, he promoted God. Now, other people, when they heard about David's victories, promoted David. But David himself never did. Yes? So the things that he would hear back was Saul killed his thousands, but David killed his tens of thousands. Yeah? Now Saul is dead, and so are his sons, and David is taking over as king. What does that sound like? Sounds like David was the one who killed all of them, right? And had them killed and everything else so he could take the throne. So again, before you're quick to judge this man, which if you look at it and knowing the history, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy. But at the same time, for his heart's at and with the things that he knows, with the information that's been given to him, with the few words that he has, he's just living like any of us would live. Okay? Then Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, remember him? He's the brother of Joab. Yeah? They're the two that killed Abner. Joab and Abishai. They are two of the lead warriors for David in David's armies. Some of the most trusted of all of them. So he says to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Please let me go over there and take off his head. Go ahead. I'm tired of hearing you hitting him with rocks. Go ahead. No, go ahead. But I love just the setting and just the warrior of really. David is always like, oh my gosh, you sons of Zeruiah, why are you always trying to kill everybody? And I'm not trying to make any excuses for them or sending them to go killing people or nothing like that. But they were who they were. And then one thing was they stayed true to it. All right? And they did love the Lord. They loved David. All right? They were murderous, though. They just were. And so their answer for everything is just kill them. Like, a dead dog saying that is another derogatory term for them. It would be like cursing, like cussing somebody out. There was nothing more disgusting than a dead dog. And if you've had to smell stinking dead dogs when they're brought out in the desert, it isn't anything but as far as that goes. So to say something like that was a very derogatory thing. And he says, man, just please let me go over there and just take off his head. Notice if his head is gone. He doesn't say let me go over there and tie him up. If his head's gone, there's no more lip. There's no more throwing rocks. There's no more dealing with this issue ever again. Like the whole issue is completely resolved. So now on the other hand, I'm looking at his wisdom and I'm like, man, his wisdom is pretty straightforward, right? I mean, like we can just take care of this in one swoop of the sword, literally. In one swing, it's all taken care of. But David's heart in response, he says, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse. He wants to curse me, let him curse. Because the Lord has said to him, curse David. So then who should tell him, why have you done so? For whatever reasons, the Lord, for whatever reasons, has put it in his head in whatever in this moment, that what he should be about to be doing is cursing. So let him do his cursing. For who are we to say anything to God, as far as God, why did you put this in this man's head? What an interesting way to look at things. So I got a quick one. This morning I'm driving in, and I hadn't read this, been reading on this. And I'm driving down the road, coming down 19th Avenue, and there's that, what is that? Is it a Quick Trip, right? On that corner there, and then there's the other gas station, liquor store over on the other corner right there. And a lot of cars are always like between the two, trying to get back on the filter onto 19th Avenue. A lot of them coming over into these neighborhoods, back right over in here, right? And so I'm pulling up and everything, and here's a car coming out of that Quick Trip, right? And they pull out, and I mean, there's nobody behind me for like a mile. And so I pull out, and I'm coming down, and they come pulling in, and I'm not sure like what they're doing, right? I mean, like there's no communication, there's no like, hey, I'm trying to get, there's nothing like that. There's this lady driving, there's this kid sitting there in the seat. And the guy I can't really see, he's like kind of slouched down and everything, got his chair in the back. Can't really see him there, but I see this lady, and and so I'm slowing down, like I'm wondering if she's trying to get all the way across, like is she trying to go into the turn lane, like I'm not sure what she's trying to do. So I slow down, I'm looking, well there's no movement, there's no nothing, she doesn't say anything, she doesn't do anything, there's no, again, nothing. And I'm waiting for something, and there's nothing. So finally I go ahead and I pull through, right? I pull up to the light. And as I'm doing so, I just happen to look up in my mirror. And she goes ahead and cuts across the rest of the road into the parking lot there where there's the other little liquor store and that right there. And she's flipping me off and she's cussing. And I'm looking at her mirror and I'm like, wait a minute, like I stopped to try to let you go through if that's what you want. Like, what? And then I thought about this. I was like, well, I guess, for whatever reason, it got put on her heart. And I thought about it, and I'm like, man, I kind of would like to go over there and try to get it off of her heart, but honestly, and then I thought about the Proverbs that we've been reading. And it says that if you try to correct a foolish man, a simple man, then he will hate you, and all he will try to do is bite you. But if it's a wise man, and you bring rebuke, then he'll love you forever. And I just thought, I was like, you know what, I don't know what the heck's going on in her mind. But literally, I stopped to try to accommodate whatever it was. So, like, whatever she thought when I went ahead and went past that offended her so badly, most people, I mean, there's something off in the whole situation. So if I go over there and try to, listen, I'm sorry, man, I just wish you would, I wasn't trying to hurt, or offend or anything like that, man, just peace be with you. Even if I would have done it, all I would have done is probably get cussed out even more, right? And so, again, it was kind of sweet because, this scripture right here kind of led my heart, because normally, I confess this all the time, but driving is my worst. Oh, at the least. If not pulling over to go confront, but not in a way to try to bring peace. Like I'm horrible. I am, and I know that. I've been praying for God to help me because that's one thing where I'm just quick. Like I'm quick to react. Again, I can always cut off everybody else, and I'm justified because I'm late and need to get to where I can go. But if anybody does it to me, oh my gosh, and that judgmental side, the flesh and nature and everything like that. But anyways, it was really, really sweet to have these words right here. Because it really took my heart to a whole different place like that, and I never went to anger. I kind of laughed and giggled, and I felt horrible for whatever was going on in her heart. I didn't want her heart to be there. But on the flip side, I was kind of lighthearted because it was just what it was, and whatever happened, whatever God allowed to go through right then is what happened, and I wasn't going to change it. You know what I mean? And it's okay. It didn't have to change my day. It didn't have to make me change where I was doing. Yeah? And it's like this right here with David. He's like, man, if that's what God has done for him, that's what God's done with him. That doesn't mean that we have to go doing anything. It doesn't mean that we need to strike back. It means that we can just stay on peace and we can stay on course and just keep on track. So David says to Abishai and all of the servants, see how my son, who came from my own body, seeks my life? How much more then now may this Benjamite? Let him alone, and let him curse. For so the Lord has ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction at this moment, and the Lord will repay me with good for his cursing this day. And as David and his men went along the road, Shemaiah went along the hillside opposite him and continued to curse at him as he went, throwing stones at him and kicking up dust.
He smells just like me.
Just the door. I'm sorry. Dust being kicked up, person up. All right, yeah, buddy, I'm sorry. Yeah. Now the king and all the people who were with him became weary, and so they refreshed themselves there. So they stopped and refreshed themselves, all right? Two different things here, guys, before we close. I do love this little tidbit just being thrown in there, guys, and I think there's so many wonderful teachings that really can come out of it. He blamed David for Saul and all the families of the minds. Possibly even Abner, which Abner also was a Benjamite, and he was murdered. And so he might even thought that David had a hand in that, okay? So there's all kinds of different emotions and feelings that probably was going on there. Guys, oftentimes this also happens in this world where somebody's perspective can distort the truth. So based on the limited information that they have, then the truth they can't see. Okay? And rarely, the scripture testifies, will a man whose mind is in this state be changed? But that it would take God to change their mind. Yeah? So the point in the scripture that I found that testified to that, the whole point of it is to not waste our time trying to change their mind when their view is distorted. When what they see as their truth,
You're just going to prolong it.
yeah, all you're going to do is just get into a big gigantic argument, and they're just going to sit there and be all after you, and your time's going to be ate up. Your energy, your heart will be so troubled afterwards because you want them to see the truth, but they can't because their anger and their bitterness is just overwhelming.
It's better to stand neutral.
Yeah, it's better just to stand neutral and let God do whatever God's working and just keep on trucking. And wherever the scripture says, wherever there's peace, then let your peace abide. Yeah? And you bring the gospel of peace. Yeah? And if it's not there, then that's okay. Just continue on. Dust off the shoes off. Wipe the dust off your shoes and continue on. Yeah? David reasoned like this. That if even my own blood would hate me and seek my destruction, then how could I expect anybody else to live it differently? Jesus said this: if this world hated me and sought to destroy me, then do not be surprised when the world hates you and seeks to destroy you. Now, just because it seeks to does not mean it has any power to. Just as this man sought to harm David doesn't mean he had any power to actually be able to do so. Even though he kicked, he threw stones, he cussed, he did all these different things, he had no power to actually change the reality of David and the reality that was in David. Just like Satan, with all the accusations and all the hurling and all the different things, has no power to change our reality of where we are at. Yeah? And we don't have to go trying to change any of the other. Like, all we need to do is just keep on our road. And keep on going. Continue to be nourished, which it comes by the words of God. Yeah? And we just keep on marching on. God's given a purpose. He has a purpose for us. We just keep on marching on in that purpose.
Well, that's good, brother.
And he further reasoned this, that whatever troubles we're going through right now in this moment, maybe God will look at our affliction right now and bless us somewhere down the road. Maybe he'll look at the trouble that we're going through and somehow turn it around, and in the end, bless us like crazy. Like a completely different viewpoint on everything that we go through from a day to
Right
day.
away, they got a time of refreshing.
Huh?
And then right after that, they got a,
They went for the time of refreshing.
yeah, that's good.
It is.
You see it, you think that's all it is, and it shows you that it's judgy. This is how I'm looking at you here, you go,
Only refresh.
Yeah. Instead of all tore up, bitter, upset, frustrated, peace, refresh in the Lord, more real than ever. I do have a strong feeling that Abishai would not have lost 1 wink of sleep taking that man's head if he would have been allowed to. Just the way that those boys were, like I don't think he would have. Yeah, I think he did enjoy it. So I don't think that would have bothered him, but everybody else, I think it would. You know, and again, the point that I kind of see in it too, guys, is sometimes even like this last week, I really did want to hit some different things in our sermon that addresses some real realities of this world today and these false teachings of the world today, and individuals that are trying to follow some of those false teachings. The fact of the matter is that very few of those, if any of those, and I don't think there was not even probably one of them that was actually here on Sunday. So if I would have quit whacking at all those things, would it have profited anything? You understand what I mean? Sometimes, guys, we're so busy and we want to, and in my heart, guys, there's some good things in it that we do need to be made aware of, just not the time and place. Okay? Nonetheless, sometimes we get so busy trying to whack on one thing, and then we forget all of the others around us. And while I don't think for that man right there, him going and doing the whack right then would have been a problem at all, you know, David's view was a little bit bigger than just that poor man or just even his own pride. Yeah? You might want to remember that next time somebody's poking yours. Others around you, and even their situation might be more important than that pride. Yeah? Guys, I love you guys. Hope it was a great class tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Covered a chapter and a half right there. Big chunk. You guys, and I love you with all my heart, and the Lord loves us so greatly. He's given us so much, guys, and so much truth, and so much just His love. Just poured out and bestowed on us, guys. And I hope everybody really loved last night's class and just really takes that to heart, and just all the workings that God's working in our lives.